对话嘉宾：美国职业网球运动员、前世界冠军安德烈·阿加西教育基金会创始人兼主席安德烈·阿加西先生上台带来主题对话，抓住机遇，源自教育。掌声有请。Ladies and gentlemen, now please join me in welcoming Ms. Joy Chen, U.S. Chief Investment Officer of TEL Education Group, and Mr. Andre Agassi, tennis world champion and founder and chairman of the Andre Agassi Education Foundation. The keynote dialogue is on the topic of education as a catalyst for opportunity.
So should we get started?
Yes, I think we should.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, on behalf of TEL, I would like to say welcome to our second Global Education Summit. And today I'm very honored to be on the stage, and I'm going to do a 40 minutes dialogue with my dear friend, who is also a person I really respect, Mr. Andre Agassi. Hi, Andre.
Hi, Joy. It's so good to see you.
Yes, I'm here. So I still clearly remember about a couple of months ago when I was in Las Vegas, we were starting to talk about this conference, and we started to do a little bit of preparation work, planning work. And now you are sitting here and doing the dialogue with me. It's just like, to me, it's like a dream become true. Thanks for making it.
Well, did you think I was lying?
No. But just a surprise, and also really seeing this coming up, really appreciate your help and your support and coming all the way here. So how often do you come to China?
Well, playing 21 years professionally as a tennis player, you come to China a lot, you know. So many times over the years. I probably average about once or twice a year.
Okay.
Now.
Once or twice a year now.
Yeah.
Okay. So this time, what is the reason sparked you to come here?
Well, starting with
thank you. Really appreciate that. Yeah.
And also the inspiration of being in the room with all of you. I mean, like-minded thinkers who recognize that the best investment we can make is in our future, in our children, and how to best educate and guide them, and how to best equip them for a future of their choosing that makes this world a better place. And I also think, when you bring a lot of minds that share that synergy together, they can create some real positive ways to solve some daunting societal issues in a scalable, sustainable way. And that's my inspiration for being here, to share some of the things that I've been through and done, to hear what many others that are at this conference have done and are continuing to do, and to dream when you're awake, because it's too easy to dream when you're sleeping. I like to dream when I'm awake.
That's great saying, yeah. Actually, I'm not surprised to hear education being part of your reasons to come over here. And I know during and after your professional career life, you have always been identified as the most vocal and visible advocates for education. I'm also wondering why education is so important to you, why you are so passionate about education.
Well, I'd have to answer that. We probably don't have enough time to even talk about the reasons why, but I'd have to say the inspiration was because education really saved my life.
Wow.
And it wasn't education that I had. I'm an 8th grade dropout. So I left school in 8th grade, but I also never had choice in my life. When I was born, my father, it was only going to be tennis. And being number one in the world was not just something I had to do. It was nothing else would be accepted. And so with that lack of choice, even though I happened to be pretty good at the sport of tennis, it left me also very disconnected with the life I was living. And at one of my lowest points, I saw an inspirational show with KIPP, which is a charter school operator in the United States, and I saw them dealing with children that don't have choice in their life because of a lack of education. And so it was kind of that connection that I want to help kids who really don't have choice, because I never did, and I feel like education is the best and most important platform to give them a chance for a future of their choosing.
Well, that's great to know, kind of like from your personal story, kind of encourage you to do more in the education sector. Yeah, and also here's another question. So is this also one of the reasons, of the many reasons why you start your own Andre Agassi Foundation for Education?
It is the reason, you know. I mean, to give you an idea of the journey that I traveled, I went to #1 in the world by the age of 24, 25 in tennis. And within 2 years, I fell to 140 in the world.
Wow.
Because I was so unhappy with my life. And I started to do things physically to myself, drugs, all sorts of things that were taking me the wrong direction at a real low point in my life when I saw this program that showed these kids who had nothing and these gentlemen who were educating them and changing these kids' future every day. It was literally overnight that I took out a $40 million mortgage to build my own charter school in my backyard of Las Vegas, now Nevada. And to give you an idea, you know, in the United States, education is separated by states, and inside states are a lot of districts, as most of you know. But in my district, it's the 5th largest in America,
True,
and
Nevada,
it's the 50th in kids that we put into college. So I felt like I could really treat my own backyard, not just as an opportunity to help the kids that need it the most, but also as a laboratory, as a way to really say, you know, kids don't fail us, we fail them. And at that moment, I started to play tennis for different reasons. I was no longer playing for trophies.
Oh, wow.
I was no longer playing for money. I was no longer playing for ranking, but I was playing for resources, for my mission. I was playing for the opportunity to share my mission. And that really was the catapult that gave me the second part of my career, from that journey back from 140 in the world back to #1. I really attribute it to those children I was helping, and how they really impacted my life. So it's really given me more than I've given them.
So they kind of make your professional career more meaningful in many ways.
They gave me my why. You know,
Okay.
we all have to ask ourselves first in life, you know, what's our why, and then
Yes. Yeah.
then our how, and then our what, you know. But for me, I never had my why until I started to really impact children's lives who didn't have choice through education.
That's beautiful. So when did you start your first charter school? If I remember correctly, that's 1994, right?
Well, that's when my foundation originated,
Okay.
but I built my first charter school in 2000.
Okay.
And that was obviously a very daunting, you know, undertaking, but nevertheless, I've been in the education space for, you know, nearly 2 decades, and have had a lot of learnings along the way. So I would, you know, share with you that those learnings led me to saying we need to always in our decisions with what we do, make sure that what we do is actually scalable, sustainable, and certainly affordable, because otherwise we're counting on the government or we're counting on philanthropy. And in both cases, I don't think that in and of itself is enough to be successful.
And actually, I know one piece of information, which is your foundation is trying to transform the education, especially the public education system in the United States. So maybe you can explain a little bit about the U.S. public education system, because not many people here know about the charter school, which is the focus for your education work.
Sure, no, I'd be happy to. So in the United States, we have about 3 silos of activity in education. We have public schools, we have private schools, which are usually, you know, for-profit, you know, educational schools, and then we have what you call charter schools or magnet schools in a certain sense. And charter schools are independently run public schools. So the only difference between a charter school and a public school is a charter school cannot access public dollars to build their facility. So as a result, they get to be run independently. But if you have a charter license, any child from the state, that goes to your charter school, the money allocated to that child follows the child to your school. So it gives you a great deal of flexibility. It gives you a great deal of opportunity to run a free, public, independent school, sort of like a business, which means you can implement accountability from the children. You can implement accountability from the teachers. So there's no teacher tenure. So if you work for 3 years, you do not have a job for life. You need to make sure that you're being accountable to your own ability to help these kids. You can hold parents accountable by their involvement in the school. So there's a lot of ways that you can use a charter school to really kind of find the inroad, into these, children's lives. And in doing so, and in saying so, quite frankly, 85% of our charter schools in America do not outperform their district peers, but the top 15% really do, by far and away outperform. And those 15% are like the Kips of the world, the rocket ships. These operators are, they're like black belts at how they get inside these children's lives and motivate them. And quite honestly, we steal from each other and we give to one another. It's all about best practices. And when I built my charter school in Las Vegas philanthropically, I raised about $185 million.
Which year was that?
A lot of years to raise $185 million, a lot of years. But what I wanted to do is make sure this school could live in perpetuity. Sure. So I wanted to kind of treat it as an endowment of sorts, and it was very hard raising that kind of money, unquestionably. It was very hard for an 8th grade dropout to figure out, who's going to be in the front of these classrooms and lead these schools to help these children. It was very difficult to do many things. The hardest part of all of it, quite frankly, was I had 1,200 kids in my school and I had 3,000 on the waiting list. So in the sport that I come from, that makes you twice the failure you are the success, because you're only helping 1,200 and you can't help 3,000. So my inspiration started to then go towards, how do I scale this mission? How do I build more charter schools across the United States? So I had to realize that I wasn't an educator, I wasn't an operator. Then what was I? I really was a facilitator. Okay. And so I started to put my mind towards, how is it possible to scale this? And I recognized that the best-in-class operators that all kind of do more or less the same effectiveness of teaching, I said, what is their limitation or obstacle in expanding? Mm-hmm. And their limitation and obstacle was the facilities component itself, right? Just like I explained, if you have a charter, the money from the state follows the child, but you can't build your facilities, so you incubate very slowly with kids coming to your school and slowly expanding. So I thought to myself, what if we could bring private capital to the table? Mm-hmm. And what if we could build a charter school on day one for a great operator with 800 kids? And let's just say that school costs us $10 million to build. And let's say there's 800 kids, and let's say there's 10,000 per student that goes to the school. Mm-hmm. That's $8 million of revenue. Mm-hmm. If you have $8 million of revenue on day one, there's a business to be had here where you can do it in a way that doesn't ride the back of the school systems, that doesn't ask private individuals to give away their money. And we created this tension in this business model that says, instead of paying us rent, we let you stabilize, we let you incubate, and then after 3 years through the tax-exempt bond market, refinance for you an opportunity to purchase back the facility. So in 15 years in the philanthropic world, I built one school for 1,200 kids. Wow. And in the last 5 years, through this out-of-the-box approach, I've deployed over $1 billion and built 90 schools across the country. Mm-hmm. And by the way, have given a slight return thereon, so that those investors invest again, and the process is continuing in a very scalable, sustainable fashion. So that's kind of been a little insight into, into my journey over the last 18 years, or at least the beginning of my journey, because more continues.
Well, this is amazing. It's kind of like you do the education, but you're leveraging your business sense to make it scalable and sustainable in many ways.
And affordable.
Affordable, exactly. That's beautiful. And I know other than the charter school kind of initiatives, you are now very interested in the early childhood education side. So why is that? And I also heard one famous quote from you, which is you believe the early education should start right outside of the delivery room. Was that your saying?
Well, I guess more or less I was saying, when I started my school, I started it in 3rd grade, and then I was adding a grade, and then I realized I need to start as early as possible. So the earlier we invest in our children, when our brains are more, pliable, and when we can learn, the first 8 years of a child's life really does set the trajectory of the road that they're gonna be on. So yes, that comment is true. But the thing that I learned the most in building all these schools and working with the greatest operators and working with the people that live in this space is there was always one common theme and one common focus that they could never quite solve for, or that they keep putting their focus on, which was early childhood literacy. Teaching children how to read. And when I kept seeing this popping up, it kind of inspired the next phase of my evolution, if you will, where, I got together with this gentleman, Andy Butler, who's the CEO now of Square Panda, the company we started a few years back, where I invested heavily in it, and then now I'm out across the world. We're applying it. We're America, big here in China as well,
and India later, right?
And India, and what it's an education tech platform that really allows us to take our latest neuroscience learnings, and apply them in real time on an individual basis through a multisensory game-based environment that leads the child and actually specifically teaches that child to get a step further in their reading and their second language learning in real time in the weaknesses that they have. We have so much neuroscience that we know. We get a lot of our stuff through Stanford, through UCSF, where we know this. The question is there a vehicle to really distribute this on scale? And so this company has been dear to my heart because as many schools as I've built doesn't compare to the impact that the implications that this could have across multiple countries. There's language implications. There's dyslexia implications. Yes. And the learnings of it are just fantastic. And the company is it's exploding. It's exploding now because of what it delivers to these children's lives.
That's beautiful. And actually, I know they have a booth here at the expo. So if any of you guys are interested in the product, you guys probably can go and check it out, put your hands there, and have some experience with their play sets. Actually, I tried it, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
It's even cooler when your kid does it on their own,
Oh, yeah, true, yeah.
You don't have to babysit.
As an adult, it's kind of difficult to compare myself to the kid when they are using it. Totally true. And you also mentioned that this Square Panda is kind of learning system by leveraging and empowering through technology. So actually today at our Global Education Summit, one of the many motives we have is about today and the future. And we all know technology has changed a lot of things in many industries, and definitely education is one of them. And with increased introduction of technology and a lot of disruptions, education landscape has changed quite a lot. And we know in the upcoming years, education will be different. So you have already involved in many education innovation initiatives. So will you please share with us, in your mind, how you picture the future education?
Well, I think this is what we're all exploring together. I don't have any comprehensive answers, but what I can tell you, what the working components need to be, is they need to be individualized somehow. You know, if you went back 150 years and you took somebody into the future and you walked them into an airport, they wouldn't know what it is. If you walked them into a train station, they wouldn't know what it is. You walk them into a school and they're going to say, oh, this looks like a big school. You know what I mean? So can we really keep up with what's required when you have a classroom of 30, 40, sometimes more kids, and a teacher can't teach to the brightest because the ones that aren't get left behind, and they can't teach to the ones that struggle because then the ones that really can achieve sort of get held back. So they end up teaching down to the middle, and when you do that, you're leaving a lot on the table. You're not
from
pushing
both sides,
from both sides, and what we need it to be is absolutely individualized in one form or fashion. We need it to be affordable, unquestionably, and we need it to be scalable.
Right.
You know, and I think when you look at technology, I mean, any of you here that have kids probably share my frustration. You know, we've watched them grow up with their phones, and it's like their phones are always, you know, in front of their face, and it reminds me of what probably happened when the TV came out. You know, parents, oh, my kids they keep sitting
panicking the similar way.
They sit in front of the TV, but the TV can be used for not so smart stuff, not so healthy stuff, or it can be very educational. I think technology is a lot the same way. Of course, there's things that can happen that aren't ideal. Of course, kids can be distracted by it. But we can use it as a powerful tool, you know, to teach, to educate, to reach, to scale, to have sustainability in a child's educational, you know, journey. So I think there'll be some similar dynamics that happen in the future, but we have to figure that out because it's too many, it's too much, and it's too dated, and it's time for it to change.
Okay. My next question is going to be a little bit interesting. So you have many titles, being the philanthropist, being the investor, and also one of the best former tennis player. And you have another title, which is the award-winning author. So I don't know how many of you here have read Andre's book, his autobiography. The name is Open, which was released the year 2009. And this book has been a huge success. It has become #1 for the New York Times bestseller list and continues hit the sales record internationally. Oh, by the way, thank you so much. 2.5 years ago, you gave me the book as the gift with some very nice, encouraging words on the first page of the book, which did inspire me a lot. Thank you so much. That is one of the best gifts I've ever got.
Oh, thank you, Joe.
And I did read your book. And I've noticed many interesting things you've documented in the book. And the one thing I noticed most is you being different and being rebellion that have been very well documented and highlighted in the book. And we all know being different, especially being rebellion, can put yourself in a not so good position in society. And I kind of figured out it did give you both positive and a negative impact to your personal life and your professional life. However, you still did very well till the end. So will you share with us how to better celebrate, embrace, and balance the characteristics being different, especially being rebellion?
Well, you know, I don't know if I'd encourage anybody to be rebellious. I mean, but I wouldn't. You know, my whole journey through my tennis was, if nothing, authentic. You know, it was real, it was honest, it was what it was. I mean, it was no secret, especially after my book came out, that I hated tennis, you know.
I was going to say that. It's like very well written there. And also later, even after you retired from your professional career, you famously said, I hated tennis.
And I said it on page 1.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, on the book. Yeah.
Well, you know, it's hard to understand how you can be successful at something you hate. But let me assure you that fear is a incredible motivator, you know, and there was, my father was a lot of things, but he also instilled in me that fear of failing, that fear. And I resented that feeling. I resented it when I was a child. I was the youngest of 4. I watched what it did to my relationship with my siblings and my father. I felt always the pressure of the world to have to win. I felt my value was tied up in my results as a tennis player. Tennis was who I was. It wasn't what I did, and that was the part that I resented the most.
Okay.
My father sent me away from home at 13 years old to a tennis academy to be raised by other tennis players like Lord of the Flies with forehands and backhands, and I resented that, and the only way out of that was to succeed. So there again, I was fighting and out of fear, and then I go to this world stage, and now I got the world telling me who I am, and I didn't even know who I was, and I have all these microphones and people telling me who I was. So I resented it, and I spoke my mind, and sometimes it was good and sometimes it wasn't good. But in any case, it was always authentic. It was always honest, at least for the moment.
Well, since we were talking about your professional career as a tennis player, no matter how much you hate it or you love it, here is a couple of things I would like to share with the audience. So, sir, being the most successful former world-class tennis player, you earned 60 men's single titles, 6-0. And you were the only male player ever to win all 4 Grand Slam titles. And you won 1 Olympic gold medal for United States. You're also a member of 3 winning Davis Cup team. And in year 2011, you were inducted into the International Tennis Hall of Fame. Wow, that's a lot of achievements. And ladies and gentlemen, I do think this deserves a big round of applause. Yep.
And I was number 2 in my own house.
Oh, okay. Do you guys know who is number 1 there? Actually, that's his lovely wife.
Yeah, she was a little bit better than me.
But good enough.
Yeah, but if she leaves me, I get to take half of everything. So this is...
She better stay.
She better stay.
Yeah, cool. And also, you are you have been the best former tennis player at all time, and now you are doing so well in the education philanthropy area by expanding your impact for education and also promoting the education reforms. So you have achieved so many things. My next question is, what do you think is your greatest achievement you have achieved ever?
Ooh. Well, if you look at time on task, it was probably getting my wife to say yes.
Oh, wow.
That took a lot of years.
How many years, if you don't mind I ask?
About 7, to be exact. About
7 years.
From the first time I tried, yeah.
Oh, wow.
But, yeah, I don't look at accomplishments on a tennis court or even off the tennis court as a standalone, winning this tournament or for me, it's been about the journey and the process, and I'd have to say my greatest accomplishment for me was the moment that I recognized, while I didn't choose my life, that I still had the opportunity to take ownership of my life, and over the course of my career, going to number 1, falling to 141 in the world, and then getting back to number 1 is what I'm most proud of.
How many years did it take you there?
A lot sooner to fall than to go up, but all in all, it was probably about from number 1 to 140. Took me 2 years. From 140 to number 1 probably took me 3 years. But in any case, the first time you get to number 1, you almost feel like it can happen by accident. I mean, you're working hard. You don't know what one day means, what another day means. You don't know what one win means or what one loss means. But the second time around, you always know where you stand because you've been there before, and you have so many opportunities to get so discouraged as you experience something that is going to be hard to overcome, or you accomplish something that doesn't really mean that much in the bigger context, and you're constantly having to keep your eyes on a daily goal and daily objectives and maintain that discipline and that intensity of focus, and you're doing it over a long period of time, and all the while, you never really believe you can do it again because, first of all, it's never really been done,
True.
and secondly, you knew how hard it was when it wasn't this hard, and now it's even harder. So I'd have to say that arc of evolution, it just kind of it made me believe that anything's achievable if you know your why, you have your reason, and then you set a path ahead of you that is goal-oriented, that you can accomplish on a daily basis. And I think that discipline and the rewards as a result has really paid great dividends in my life.
That was around what age you realized you need to figure out why before you figure out how to do things?
I was 27 and a half years old. I was at the lowest point in my life. And my coach basically locked me in a hotel room, shut the doors. We walked in and locked it and said, we're going to do one or two things. We are going to quit or we're going to start over. And I remember never hating tennis so much as I did that moment. And I remember looking out the window, seeing a lot of people walking and a lot of cars. And I remember asking, what is their reason, for their life? And did they really choose? Do any of us really choose our life? I mean, who gets to choose where you're born or what parents you have? Are you supported? Are you not supported? Do you have the chance for education? Do you not?
True.
Do your strengths, your weaknesses? We don't choose so many of these things,
Right.
but it doesn't mean that we can't take ownership of what our life is. And I think that was the epiphany. The epiphany was that moment. But epiphanies don't change your life. What changes your life is what you do with the epiphany and what you do with it every single day. And that was the part that I think ultimately made me, who revealed to me who I really am to myself, and gives me the daily confidence, even to this day, to move forward.
Yeah. Well, so I understand this very well as well. I think life is not always about sunshine and roses. It always comes with the darkness and uncertainty and unhappy times. But if you have the right mindset, growth mindset, and you have the right attitude, and especially when you know why you are doing some of the things, then plus you can work very hard until the end. You will survive, and by then, life will bring you more flowers, more happiness, more joy, more love. And by then, I think you will have a better foundation to build up your future life on top of it. And you will not only survive, I do think you actually will thrive. So that's what I personally believe in as well.
And that's why you're so appropriately named Joy.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, maybe that's true. Yeah, that's my English name. Joy is my English name. Yeah, that's true. So we still have a couple minutes, and I like to talk about something being a parent. So I'm a mom, and I know you are the father for two very loving kids. And we always think you and your wife, Stephanie, both are the best tennis players ever in history. We would think the talent would be there in your kids' blood or in their gene. So do you train your kids to become the professional tennis player?
No, I'm training my 15-year-old daughter to not go out with your 15-year-old son, because this is my first priority. You gotta.
Yeah, some background information. I happen to have a 15-year-old boy, and Andre has a 15-year-old daughter.
Yeah. So if I had to tell you my parenting perspective as it relates to how I was raised, I mean, I think in life we all, as parents, sometimes spend so much time giving our kids what we never had that we forget to sometimes give them what it is we did have, you know, and so for me, I have to hold myself accountable to this. But the one thing I never had that I wanted to give my kids was choice. I mean, my father gave me a great deal of discipline, a great deal of, of work ethic and urgency and perseverance and a lot of things. So I wanted to start by making sure that my children are choosing their path, but then hold them accountable that their life reflects how they claim they value it. So no, we didn't want them to play tennis. If they chose it, of course, we would have to, live that journey with them. But more importantly than what they chose is how are they going to choose to go about it. And that's where we implement the disciplines of how we lived. So, my son chose baseball. He's loved it since he's been 6 years old, 7 years old, and he's 17 now, and he's thriving. And, he is doing some special things with it. You talk about genes, and the parents, and I assure you it's a big gene pool out there, a huge gene pool, and you haven't met the rest of our family. So,
Okay.
They might have got, who knows what kind of genes they got, but they're beautiful souls. My daughter she's an artist, she's a hip-hop dancer, but they both have a passion for life. They both have a kind and generous spirit. They both have a moral compass, and we're really proud of them.
Great. So you kind of let them to figure out who they are, what they want to do, and you will just be a supportive dad, and Stephanie being a supportive mom, and to help them to be there.
Not just supportive, but demanding.
Also,
in other words,
so are you a tiger father?
well, no, listen, you can choose, but then you better live it.
Okay.
So
once you make the decision. Yeah.
Yes, if this is what you're going to do, and if you're going to decide if you're going to commit to a baseball team and you're 7 years old, and guess what? You committed to this team for this season, you're going to see it through. You can make another decision if we want to talk about that later, but we're going to see this through. And then that lesson, as kids get older, it becomes more opportunities to hold them to what they claim they believe. And, if you say, I love doing this, then you're going to do it a certain way. If you say, I want to do it, then you're going to make sure you're giving it 100% in every aspect. So we have a tremendous amount of discipline and demand, but we don't choose for them.
Okay, they make the decision, but to do the follow-up, you and Stephanie will always be there, making sure they can do the rest.
Yes, in subtle but very clear ways. That's correct.
So who is more strict, like you or Stephanie?
She's German engineering. I mean, everything is in order. Everything.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So she's very strict on like timing. Very strict on food. Very, very strict on just the balance of our life. But I think if some line gets crossed in the family from the kids, I think I'm a little bit clearer of a communicator that's not going to happen again.
Interesting to know. And here is my last question. So who is the person that you admire the most till now?
Oh, that's, listen, I live with her, so I live with her. She's an amazing person that teaches me how to live values on a daily basis. So absolutely my wife. But when you talk about from a distance, I think one of the great inspirations for me in my school as well was Nelson Mandela.
Oh, wow. Why?
I got to meet him back in the lowest point in my life in 1997, and he made me believe that that every journey is important and every journey is achievable. This hit me so hard. I listened to him talk about what he went through for what he believed in, and I thought about my life in those terms, and my life. After being around him, my life felt important to me, and my life felt achievable to me. Despite what he's been through, he could have, there was such humility in who he was as a person that I actually walked away feeling like my life was important too, and I should respect it too. and I can do this, even though it seems so daunting. And I think I've applied that lesson in everything from what I did on a tennis court to out-of-the-box ways to scale my mission in the charter school space across the country.
Yep.
Now in the ed tech space with Square Panda, I have this complete, utter belief that we can do it. And I attribute a lot of that to my experience with him.
Wow. When did you meet him?
1997 in November.
Oh, wow. About, almost 30 years. Oh, no, I'm sorry, 21 years ago. Yeah.
I'm an 8th grade dropout. Don't make me do math. I don't know. I have no idea.
Okay, yeah.
1997.
Wow, that's a long time. But it's great. So he it's kind of milestone for your life after you met him.
Very inspirational intersection.
Great. And ladies and gentlemen, I do have a lot of things I can talk to Andre about, but due to the time limitation, I think we have to wrap up here and give the floor to the next panel. But before we get off the stage, I would like to ask for you guys to give Andre another big round of applause, not only for what he has done, what his dedication and contribution to the tennis court, but also to education. Thank you, Andre. Thank you.
Joy. Thank you.
感谢两位嘉宾的精彩对话。Thank you very much to Ms. Joy Chen and Mr. Andre Agassi for their thought-provoking discussions.